Welcome to Treasure Talks. Today I've got Matt Windle, pro boxer and also poet.
Right, mate, how are you? It's nice to see your face pop up on my Instagram the other week.
Yeah, you know what that was? I saw you on Boxing Social and I thought, flipping, I haven't seen you in a long time. Obviously, we used to train at the same gym because I was doing white collar boxing and you was a pro boxer at the same gym because that was the sort of range, wasn't it? I think,
It
but
was great. I love where I'd come in on like my days off and stuff when the white collar lads were sparring and yeah, just try and sort of do the coaching in the build up for their fights and stuff as well. And no, I used to really enjoy it. It was good fun, and the lads are always saying, and the girls as well. 'Cause we get a lot of girls down there boxing as well, don't we?
yeah, there's a lot more now as well. So such a range of different people taking up boxing at the minute. How you been with the COVID situation? Obviously, it's one of them things that sometimes I try not to mention because it seems to be a topic all the time, but it comes into everything, doesn't it?
I don't think you can avoid it really.
Uh,
I mean, like everyone, it's been tough. From the training and boxing perspective, apart from not fighting, which obviously is a nightmare. Um, I said this in the boxing social interview, but I'm used to not being able to go to restaurants or not see my friends for months at a time or having to sacrifice things. So from that aspect of it, it's not like I go to the pub every Friday after work or something like that. So I've really missed that side of it because I haven't, because I don't normally do that anyway. The fact that I've been lucky enough to continue to train because of being a professional boxer, that meant that aspect of my life has been the same. So the training has been the same, the dieting has been the same. It's just that there's not really been an end point to it. Do you know what I mean? There's not been a fight to kind of train for, but it's allowed me to just get up and get out of the house and keep active. Um, Work is different. I've still got work coming in, but because the majority of my poetry work is within schools and doing school visits. Of course, schools have been closed, and then even the schools that are open or when they're open, a lot of them aren't accepting external visitors. So that's been a bit different, having to do like Teams workshops and Zoom workshops and that sort of stuff. And I've got my mentoring qualifications during lockdown as well, so I'm doing more now one-to-one and mentoring work during lockdown with some young people in care and stuff like that. Just trying to kind of help out the best way I can that way, and it helps me as well because it gives me a reason to get up early in the morning and get out.
yeah, it sounds like that kind of boxing mindset as well puts you in good stead for something like this because it's a struggle for everyone. But with the kind of focus that a boxer has, like that sounds like it's crossed over nicely. And I can't help but notice you've got a nice black eye there. So, you must be working hard in the gym.
She hasn't been trying to make up out on me, that's for sure. Told me to do the washing up, and I said nah. So she can,
That's what you get. So, how's it been? Because you haven't fought for a couple of years as well. Looking on your record, so are you just coming back now and under a new management?
no, so it was November 2019, so we're kind of coming into 18 months. November 19 that I last fought, and then we were supposed to have the rematch in February of last year. So I paid to get my medical and everything all renewed, and then he had to pull out through injury or whatever. So that stopped the February fight from happening. Then of course March happened and COVID and lockdown and everything. So I paid like the best part of $1,000 to get my medical and everything done, and then didn't box for the entirety of last year, and then didn't train for kind of the first 3 month lockdown that we had. So sort of March till June, I was doing like maybe one run a week, and I was doing like a exercise thing online, and that was pretty much as far as it went for me. When you think that when I'm training for a fight, I probably train about 11 times a week, train twice a day, and training twice a week is nothing really. You know what I mean? So I kind of went 3 months of pretty much doing nothing at all. But I felt like my body needed it. I had niggles everywhere from my calf, my elbow, my back, my jaw. I was just niggling all over the place. So I felt like I needed those 3 months to just switch off away from it. Then when we were allowed back into the gyms in May, wasn't it, when the football started
Yeah.
again? I went back to the gym in June, and since June I haven't been out at the gym. I've been training and dieting and yeah, just kind of living like a pro really. So by the time I next get back into the ring, it will basically be a year that I've been training and dieting solid, without any end point. So hopefully we'll get something come up sooner rather than later.
But that's helped sort of refresh you ready for what's coming, do you think, mate? Because as a boxer as well, sometimes you don't know when to say, right, I've got these niggles, it's time to sort of rest up. So
I haven't got the time. Do you know what I mean? It's a short career anyway. I'm getting quite old now for a flyweight and stuff. I've still got plenty left in me, but I'm not
how old are you now?
30. So for flyweights as well, it'd be one thing if I was a heavyweight. I'd probably just be coming into my prime now. But for a
It's
lad
weird
that
that is, isn't it? It's the same in football as like a goalkeeper has a longer career and heavyweights are the same. But yeah, if you're in the smaller weights,
thing as well, because when it doesn't matter how tall we are, we're still having to make weight and we're still fully grown for what like we can be. Do you know what I mean? So if we go up to like 9.5, 10 stone, and then you're 30, and then you've got to get your body down to like 7.12, 7.13. It's a lot. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's one of the hardest things is being able to make weight for people. But I'm doing all right with my diet at the moment. So there are times where I've been like a right moon face. But,
sounds good. I want to get back into the boxing, but I can't help but go into the poetry again. You're known as the poet with punch, so can you just tell us a bit more about that and how it come about?
yeah. So okay, really quickly from the beginning, I got permanently excluded from school when I was 15 to year 10. So you're going into your GCSEs, your exams, your important years. And I wasn't at mainstream school anymore. So I was at my proof school and we had to do some coursework. And she said, you've either got to do a 2-page story or a 1-page poem. So I was like, boom, I'm going to do the 1-page poem. I was being a bit lazy. I like rap music and all that sort of thing. So I thought I'll just do a rhyming poem. And then thankfully the teacher was impressed with it and told me to enter into the Young Poet Laureate competition, which eventually I did. She kept pestering me. She's like, you entered? You're like, not yet, miss, but I will. Eventually I did on the last day. And then I made the final. And then that's when I got to experience poetry and spoken word and stuff for the first time. And I was just kind of like, I didn't realize, I was gobsmacked. I was like, I didn't realize this was poetry. It still came across quite cool to me. So I didn't win the first year, but then I entered the next year, ended up winning and becoming the Young Poet Laureate in 2007. So then being the Poet Laureate for young people, I was always asked to perform at events where young people were, and then where there were young people, there were teachers in schools and so on. So they'd come up to me and say, our kids really like your poem, and they normally hate poetry. You come into schools and do workshops. So we'd exchange details. I learned a workshop format. There are other poets that kind of helped mentor me. One guy called Giovanni, another guy called Richard Grant. So I learned from them and sort of was writing everything down like meticulously, like 11:43, start writing the poetry, that sort of stuff. I was
Yeah,
meticulous. I'd go into the schools and to begin with, I was looking at my notes, I was like, oh, it's not 11:43 yet, I've got to wait till 11:43 and just meticulous with it. And then of course you start to just know how long you can spend on something. You just get to walk within it. And it really is a case of word of mouth, really. You go to one school, it's good. That teacher knows another teacher at another school. So they say, oh, if you want to engage your kids with poetry and English and writing and expressing themselves, I've got this pro boxer that will do it. So then they pass my details on. They invite me in. And it's just sort of a snowball effect from there, really.
I think it's
How people express themselves more, and give them confidence to pursue their passions. One thing that I say to them is I'm not there to convince them that poetry and or boxing are the best things in the world. What they are the best things in the world for me, and that they enabled me to express myself when I was going through more difficult, challenging times at school. So whether they're, the typical sort of lad that wants to be a builder, or you're more not so stereotypical girl that wants to be a rugby player or whatever it might be. If you want to do it, do it. Kind of, it doesn't matter if friends don't support you with it, or people say you can't or shouldn't, or just do what you want to do. Do you know what I mean? That's what I try and instill with them, a little bit of belief, because young people nowadays, man, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's so.
I was thinking that as well. Like you talked about some of your issues when you was younger, because obviously you got excluded, and that's what took you down this path of poetry, and now it's gone full circle where you're in there and helping these kids. What kind of differences are you seeing from what you experienced as a kid to now? Because I can only imagine, like you've got all these, everything's fast, everything's social media, and I bet that there's some things that stand out to you.
They're almost, while still being, many of them, it doesn't matter even if they're 14, 15, a lot of times without saying patronising, they are still children as well. Do you know what I mean? In some respects, they're just kids. But then, to counterbalance that, they're probably older than they've ever been as well. They're more savvy, they're more aware, they're more globally aware, but they're more socially aware of themselves and stuff as well. And they're worried about how other people are perceiving them. And, oh, well, if I upload this picture on my Instagram, what will people think of me? Or, that kind of thing. And they're kind of second guessing and questioning almost everything that they're doing. And in one sense, it's good. Like if you was going to upload a photo onto your Instagram that, maybe you shouldn't, because it might come back to haunt you in a few years, or if an employer was to look at it or something like that, you wouldn't want those types of people to see it. So to second guess yourself that way and kind of say, hold on, how, should I be putting this picture online? That, I think, is fair enough. But when you just start worrying about what people might say about the way you look, or something like that. So I'm noticing a lot more young people. Like, I can't go to a school now without working with groups of young people that are diagnosed with depression, or have got anxiety, ADHD, or they've all kind of got some form of labels to some extent, whereas even when I was at school, so, talking 15, 20 years ago, it's not that long ago in the greater scheme of things. I kind of, I don't, I mean, I'm sure there must have been, but it wasn't like a thing where people would have anxiety or be depressed or that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's a lot more, people are a lot more aware of it now, I think. And but
Yeah.
with some, it almost, they kind of allow it to shackle them a little bit, and say, oh, I can't do that because I've got, and then whatever it is that they've got. And of course that isn't the case. They absolutely can do everything that anybody else can do. Do you know what I mean? And it's, a lot of it just comes down to confidence, and then being worried about what the rest of the class might say, or how they're going to be perceived by other people, or that kind of thing. Where I'm very lucky that I've always, if I've wanted to do something, I've just done it. So it's like when people started saying to me, oh, boxing and poetry, that's different. People have been saying that to me since I was like 15, 16. And it's only when people started saying it to me that I was like, yeah, I guess so. I guess it is. Like, I didn't think about it because I enjoyed both of them. So I just did them both. And
Yeah.
they were kind of separate things, but I didn't purposely keep them separate. It was just, I did the one in the day, and then I went to the gym on the night time or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But I've never thought about what other people might think of me doing something. Whereas young people now, I think almost everything that they do is like, what's everybody else gonna think?
Yeah.
But I think if you're happy with what you're doing, who cares what anybody else thinks? I don't know. It might be easy to say, but I just think we should just care less about what other people think.
Well, you're a good role model for that. With, like you say, you did poetry. You're doing poetry and boxing, and when you probably first started doing that, you would have had a sort of reaction to it. And now, further in, people are celebrating that fact. But you had to keep that persistence at first.
And people are, say, I think because I've always kind of um, been honest and open about it. I've never tried to convince somebody that I'm doing something else. It's like, oh, do you mean rapping? You know, you want to be a rapper, or is it like rap? And you know, you kind of go, well, yeah, kind of, I guess, a bit. But it, I've never tried to say to people, even my friends or whatever, who's growing up, like, I'm a rapper, or I want to be a rapper, or I'm writing raps, or I'm writing songs or lyrics. It's always been poetry. That's always what I've called it, whether I'm in the boxing gym or whether I was knocking about on the streets with my mates as a teenager or whatever. I always just called it poetry. So I think if it was something that I would have tried to hide, people almost would have tried to take the mick out of it a little bit more because I was trying to hide it. So then they'll take the mick out of it. But because of, they'd be like, oh, what are you doing? You're writing a rap, you're writing some lyrics. And I'm like, no, I'm just writing a poem. And they're like, a poem? And I'm like, yeah, poem. And they're like, oh, right, okay, want to play FIFA? And just
Yeah.
carry on, you know what I mean? So I think because I've just sort of, like I say, just been unapologetic about things that I've wanted to do. It's the same now when I go into schools with regards to the boxing, because their teachers tell them that a professional boxer's coming in to work with them, and they don't expect little me to come walking through the door. Do you know what I mean? They expect someone the size of Anthony Joshua to just come barging through the walls and have muscles on his muscles and just be like, "Urgh," do you know what I mean? They don't, other than when I'm like this, they don't expect me to turn up. Do you know what I mean? Because I was working at a young offenders last week, and one of the girls there was like, "Oh, well, you're a bit skinny, aren't you, to be a boxer?" I was like, "Well, that's what we've got weight categories for and stuff." She's like, "Aren't you a bit scrawny to be a fighter?" And it's funny because it was World Book Day, and I was like, "You ever heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover?"
I like it, but I bet that gets a bit annoying, doesn't it? The certain stereotypes, and I think we talk about kids and sort of breaking out those boxes, but in fact, it's everyone, isn't it? Like a lot of people are scared to fail at things or put themselves out there and do what they want to do. But going back to sort of the stuff you're doing in schools, how's that? It seems like it's well received from what I see on social media and stuff, and I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, see, this is why I love really bigging it up as poetry as well. Because if I went in there, if the teacher said, "Oh, rappers coming into work with you," their expectations would be sky high anyway. They think they'd enjoy it because they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do some rap," so they expect to enjoy it. Whereas I do my assemblies or whatever at the start of the day, and I'm like, "Morning, year 9," or whoever I'm with, and I'm like, "My name's Matt. I'm a poet. Today I'm going to get you writing some poetry," and you just hear them go, "Ooh," with sign and everything. And then what I do is we talk about different genres of music. And I say the way there are different genres of music, there are different genres of poetry. So it's not just Shakespeare or love or World War. There are lots of different types of poetry. And we go through like spoken word and written word and slam poetry and so on. And then we get into rap and how that's also a genre of music. But the rap is an acronym for rhythmical Americanized poetry. So the P in rap stands for poetry. So when they're in my sessions, if they want to write a rap, if they want to write some lyrics, if they want to write a traditional poem, it all still comes under this
Hang on
poetry
a minute. So RAP stands is actually an acronym. I'm learning something here. I didn't know that. And I love
poetry.
rap.
Yes, we just kind of get rid of the Americanized bit and we just say rhythm and poetry when we're in school. So it's like, I'm not bothered what you want to kind of
Yeah.
call dress it up as. Just I expect you to give it a go. Do you know what I mean? So then we talk about kind of a sibling of rap being a freestyle. So then what I do is I get the teacher at the start of the day to print out the year group register. I've got like about 200 names on the list, and I just quickly kind of tick off 40, 50 names. And then I just make up I freestyle this quick poem on the spot using some of their names. And what I do is I look for the ones that have got like a play on words for a surname, or one that's got like a really hard to rhyme with surname. So if someone was called like, I don't know, Dan Green or something like that, I'd say, I want to hear poetry that's nasty and mean, poetry from Dan who's like the Hulk when he's green, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You do like words, and then they go from the first thing I ask them is, who think poetry's boring? And they're all like like that, hands straight up in the air. And then I start saying the poems about their friends, or them, or whatever, and they're like, "Oh," and they start going nuts within like the first 5 minutes. So I talk to them about how I don't want them to be conscious about their spelling, grammar, or, any of that. Every writer goes through an editing process. No one writes something perfect first time. I'm not expecting them to get anything perfect in my session. I just want them to, like I say, give it a go and apply themselves correctly. So I think when I start explaining that to them, you see their walls sort of breaking down a little bit because I haven't got the pressures that teachers have of Ofsted breathing down my neck and stuff like that. So I can allow children to do a piece of writing and spell every word wrong if that's where they're at. But it allows them still to be expressive and creative and to get their ideas out of them, and sometimes the young people that the teachers say to me, you might have a bit of problem with this next class. So if you do, let me know and we'll get blah blah straight out. They're normally the best classes, because they they may not be academically minded, but they're not stupid. A lot of time those that don't do well in lessons and in classroom are very creative, so they just enjoy having the reins taken off them a little bit and just saying sort of express yourself,
Yeah,
get a piece of writing afterwards.
it's a different way of learning, isn't it? I find a lot of the time when people say, "Oh, this kid's naughty" or whatever, it's actually they're not captivated by the learning that's there, and it's not a system for everyone sitting at a desk and writing. I know I struggled with it, and I wouldn't have said I was a stupid kid or anything, but I couldn't sit there for too long and concentrate like that.
Those as well that are not naughty in every lesson, because then you have to go, well, why are they good for this and this lesson, and then why are they awful for this and this lesson? It can't just be 100% down to the child. And then for the young people that maybe are disruptive in many or most of the lessons, most of the time then they've got so much else going on in their life that sometimes just making it through the school gates is an achievement. So if they were supposed to make it through the school gates at 8:30 and they end up making it through there at 8:45, yeah, okay, you want them to get there on time next time or whatever. But when you have to go through and experience some of the things that those young people are going through, making it through the school gates at all was an achievement. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's just about trying to be mindful of that and what. But I think some senior schools largely too big. We go through primary schools where you've just got your class and your teacher, and they can know you and your history and how to manage you and that. Because with me, if teachers ever shouted at me, I'd shout back. I'd just rear up and you'd just get my back up. Whereas teachers that had talked to me, even if they were telling me off, even if they were suspending me, even if they were calling my mum, they never got a bad reaction after me because they spoke to me.
Yeah,
But the majority of teachers could never like change their man management style. It was just, I'm going to shout. So if Matt wants to shout back, then he'll just get in more trouble. But getting in more trouble, it didn't bother me because I wasn't happy being at the school anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it's very difficult for teachers to know how to manage each of the students. The thing is, in fairness, they don't have to know how to manage almost the students. They only need to know how to manage the ones that they're constantly talking to and speaking with. The ones that are kind of always in trouble. If every time you shout at them, you shout back, don't shout at them. You can still tell them off without having to shout at them. If that doesn't, some kids need shouting at. It like scares them into behaving again. Do you know what I mean? And that's where you need to know the man management of it. But for a lot of those sorts of kids, it will probably just be triggering issues that they've got anyway from shouting or violence, and it's not going to be making them feel at ease at all. So yeah, it's just a bit weird, isn't it?
yeah, everyone is different, and yeah, I agree with that. Some people need shouting at, some people need sort of an arm around them. And I'll say this: you've been in there and experienced it. I'm sure like they've got their work cut out as well, the teachers. But it kind of, yeah, I can imagine these days as well.
Next level.
But it's probably similar to boxing in a lot of ways, isn't it? Like what a coach has to spot there with who they put their arm around and who they say, look, you're not putting your best out there today. You know, it's different coaching styles. What similarities do you find between poetry and boxing? Is there any? Because they're both arts to me. What I love about boxing is the art side of it.
No, 100%. Well, it's something that I talk about quite regular. Is that it's an art form. You know, it's a martial art, so it's 100% whether you're looking at a painting, creating a piece of poetry, doing some music, or boxing or kickboxing or martial art, whatever. It, it's an art form, so immediately there are two similarities. So they may be opposite ends of the scale, but they are still part of the same scale. You know, they're not on totally different scales or anything. Um, like anything to kind of be successful and stuff, really, as well. It's not just exclusive to these two things, but you know, the dedication, the repetition, everything that has to go into it. You can't just get into the ring and have a boxing match, and I can't just stand on stage and perform a poem. I've got to put work and time and effort and energy into both of those things. So you have to set your alarm in the morning and get up and train before work, or you've got to set your alarm and get up and do your writing that you've got to get done, especially when I'm writing for like a business or a company, a commissioned piece. I've got to be quite regimented with making sure that I've got this poem in by the deadline to a satisfactory
Was
standard.
was that an epiphany moment for you where I heard that boxing came shortly after poetry for you? Did you start writing these poems and that structure suddenly made you think, oh, well, you know, you get what you put in and, you know, so because you see the reward for me, like I love exercising because you literally see your rewards as you go and that just gives you reason to keep putting in and banking that sort of effort.
No, I said to someone the other day, I was trying to think of an acronym for rep when you're doing your reps, and I was like, well, you know, you're improving because you know, at first you could only do 10 reps, and now you can do 11 reps, and then it's 15 reps, and then it's 25 reps, and so on. And I was saying it's like real evidence of progress. You know, that's what a rep is, isn't it? You know what I mean? And it shows that you're moving forward. And I think it was probably more subconsciously that I kind of put those pieces together in my mind more than consciously. I don't think at the time when I was 15, 16, 17, I kind of thought a great deal about the similarities between the two. I think what forced me to think about the similarities is as people start to ask me, you know, are there similarities between the two? And the more you talk about it, and then the more you think about it, you know, I've said before, me getting in the ring to have a fight is the same as me getting on stage to perform a poem. You know, no one sees what goes in to either the training to have the fight or the writing of the poem. You know, it's not just a case of you just sit there and within 20 minutes, boom, you've got something done. Sometimes maybe it might be, but a lot of times it takes a lot of hard work that comes with it. So there's that. It's the whole rhythm sort of process as well. You know, Prince Nassim used to say he used to listen to songs in his head whilst he was fighting, and he used to try and box and move to that rhythm. And the very basic 4-beat rhythm that I encourage young people in my classes to write to. That's the same sort of, you know, forward, left, back, right movements that you drill in the footsteps when you're doing footwork drills and stuff like that. So you can kind of. There was one time I had a class and they were really struggling to get this 4-beat rhythm. So I got them up. I got them into their stance and I got them going forward, left, back, right, and I just got them moving in that 4-beat rhythm. And then we sat back down and carried on writing the poem. And they got it a lot more once they've been able to feel it. And it's like, oh, okay, that's 1, 2. Rather than me just saying to them, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they just couldn't get it. Once they'd managed to feel it themselves, they got it, and then they were off, and you know, there was almost steam coming off the paper. Do you know what I mean? They were just writing, and they were off. So yeah, there are a lot of similarities between the two, definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between hearing someone say it and then feeling it for yourself like that. Did you ever see Emmanuel Augustus? Now, that's
Mm.
someone who used to, anyone listening, I'd say go and have a look at Emmanuel Augustus. I think he fought Floyd Mayweather, but that was someone who had a tune in his head whilst he was fighting. It was really funny, like, but he was good.
No music, you just think, what kind of music are they listening to?
Yeah, yeah. Um, can I put you
So
on?
it's an expression, isn't it? So it's a way for young people and anyone that does it to express themselves. So whether they physically want to punch it out of them and get it out of them that way, or they want a more kind of stimulus of just sitting there and writing about it, it's a way to get their thoughts, their feelings, emotions out of them in a positive way instead of, I don't know, punching the wall or self-harming or doing something that's not as constructive for them or the people around them. So that's another thing, probably one of the biggest similarities as well. It's the expression, it's the way it can make people feel better and that sense of achievement as well. Like when they wrote a poem, and a lot of times young people look and they're like, I didn't think I could do that. No,
Yeah,
but or when there are sometimes kids, I might work in like an SCN school or something, and you're always told they've got bad memories, not by the teacher. Growing up in general, they think they've got bad memories, and then I end up getting these kids in SCN schools, and they throw like a 1, 2, slip, right hand, left hook, roll, jab, or and we get them doing a proper little combination, and the teachers often are even mesmerised at how they're memorising it, but it's it is their memory, but because they're feeling it as well. I mean, again, we're back to that, like doing it, but because they're feeling it, it's kind of, it's not memory muscle. They've only just learnt it, but it is just that kind of memory muscle of movement and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So that's probably the biggest correlation between the two as well. Is it's just a way for people in general and young people to positively express themselves.
yeah. I learn a lot better like that as well. Like either seeing someone, you know, if it's training, see them doing it rather than telling me, and everyone does learn different. Would I be able to ask you to perform a poem now, or
I think that's all right.
uh,
I did one for a magazine called B Magazine a couple of weeks ago, but it hasn't come out yet, and I haven't performed it anywhere else because no one's, I haven't had a reason to perform it, have I? So all I got, I know one of the girls that works on it, Hannah. She did my mentoring course, and all she said to me was, "Matt, I need a poem on the theme of hope." That was kind of as much as I got. So yeah, I came up with this concept of shaken snow globes, and that was the title of the poem. And then that's kind of what I allowed to give me inspiration as I go through the piece. I think it's only about a minute.
awesome. Yeah, that sounds good.
Even shaken snow globes come to know the joys of peace. A change in time, much better days, an iron for the creeks. To see the smooth, we must encounter rough. To have the highs, we need the lows. What picks us up when we are down more than the chimes of hope? Incentives keep our focus on the paths of moving forward. Endless possibilities give us light when times are tortured. They are whispered promises yet unfulfilled, but we keep the faith in their potential. A blaze that drives our heart and will with a mind that's existential. You can feel the hands of time slowly unbind our feet as even shaken snow globes come to know the joys of peace. A product built for purpose still has the ability to adapt, a force of evolution as our body soon reacts. The action of internal conflict battles to and fro, and by challenging our inner fears, we find the room for growth. So the countdown continues for when the worst of days retreats, because nothing lasts forever. Even shaken snow globes come to know the joys.
That's awesome, mate. I love it. That's quality. Um, the first time I think I heard you perform a poem, obviously not live, but like was on YouTube when I think I came in to train in the gym, and you were filming for a poem where you just turned pro, I think, as well, pro boxer. and I think it's the Matt. I think it's called, and it's awesome. And along with that as well, the filming that they did, it's brilliant. So I tell people to go and check that out as well.
There's some university students from Scotland that contacted me, um, and they just, I think, stumbled across me somehow on Instagram or something, and it was like, oh, boxer and a poet, we could do something pretty cool with that, I reckon. So bless them, they travelled down from Scotland the night before and stayed in one of the hostels in and around the Jewellery Quarter. And then we were there like whatever it was, 6 o'clock in the morning, ready for filming. And they created this amazing video of me doing the poem and training in the gym and punching towards camera and on the pads with Neil and all these different things, and they did an amazing job. And I know that they've won awards at like film festivals and stuff for it as well. They kind of tag me and stuff when they win it, which is good. So it was nice because they were happy to do it because it could go towards their course and overall qualification and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, I got a nice shiny video out of it. So yeah, if anyone wants to, I think it is just cool. If they probably just type up MattWindlePoet the Matt, I think then they'll find it. And yeah, it's a decent one.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's really inspiring as well. Well, if I was to start poetry, where would I even start? Like, how would someone get into it?
With regards to getting out there and doing it, or just sort of picking up a pen or something and starting?
Just more picking up a pen and starting on your own, because it can be, obviously you can just start jotting down on a pad, but it can be hard to know, what direction to go in.
A lot of times people kind of worry about like if theirs is right, or good enough or something like that. And the right answer is it's never right. You know what I mean? What one person will love, somebody else will absolutely hate. So it's just it's expression. It's about it feeling right to you. So if it feels right, then it's right. I suppose some of the things they could do if they just wanted an idea of how potentially theirs could maybe sound is to research and look at a abundance of different poets. So my favourite poet is an American guy called Buddy Wakefield. And some of the stuff he comes out, I just think, man, like he must have taken some drugs to come out with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
He comes out with some of the most insane, amazing sentences and stuff. It's incredible. So watch him. Akala, Stephen Camden, Polar Bear, Dreadlock Alien, Kate Tempest, Holly McNeish, Tony Thompson, and it's a bit of a rabbit hole then. At Sully Breaks, I think as soon as you start to find one or two, you'll get video suggestions for other people. Do you know what I mean? And you can go away and click through them, and just watch and sort of see what you like, what you don't like. They may think that they just want to do rhyming couplets then, or they may think I want to do more kind of spontaneous rhyming, so I don't just want couplets, but I'll just rhyme sort of every now and then. It really is, although it's not very helpful, it really is a case of then just start writing.
Yeah.
Just I tend to type more than physically write anything, simply because I can type quicker than I can write. So when my brain's coming up with ideas, I can type it down a lot quicker, and then I don't forget as many ideas. You know what I mean? So it is just a case of writing, and then if you want to know, I suppose, if it's any good, having the confidence to then show close friends or family or people that you trust that aren't just going to be absolutely horrible, and then the more confidence you get with it, you'll then, when we're able to go to an open mic night, one of the nights, you'll think, I'm not going to perform anything tonight, I'm just going to watch. And then you'll watch and you'll see what sort of standard everyone else is at, and then you'll see some people and you'll think, mine's better than his. Do you know what I mean? And then other people, and your head will explode because you're like, she's so much better than I am, or do you know what I mean? And it's just so you get a good taste for it. Everyone's always friendly and stuff there as well. And then when you see it, you get inspired then to go home and write more.
Yeah, I suppose it gives you ideas, doesn't it? Then seeing other people perform their art form, and it's going to be so different because it's all about experience and like your own perception.
You can hear a poem that can trigger a poem for you. You could then give you inspiration to write a poem, and your poem then is absolutely nothing like the poem that you was listening to. It's not like it's a rip-off version or anything. Sometimes it's not even about the same topic. There may just be one word or one sentence that poet said in their poem, and you was like, I could do a poem about, and then whatever it is, do you know what I mean? And then you go away and write that poem, but you would never have got that without listening to it. So when you get into it, so now, other than ones like Billy Wakefield that I just mentioned that I really love, I tend to not listen to too many poets, especially ones that are in my sort of field. Do you know what I mean? So like if I was a rapper, I wouldn't be listening to many other rappers. I'd be listening to like country music or Tamla Motown, or so I listen to poets that are very different to me. Poets that are more spoken word based, I don't listen to a great deal now, simply because I don't want to sound like kind of a
Yeah,
copy.
I've heard this from a lot of creators where some of it's like creative fatigue, from thinking too much of these things, and then also indirectly taking ideas, like too many ideas from them and running with them.
You don't mean to do it, but you just kind of find yourself sort of, they're almost copying them or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I try not to listen a great deal to other spoken word poets now, but I've been performing for half my life now. Do you know what I mean? So I've been around. Whereas when I first started, I was watching everyone. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So that's the kind of thing that
yeah. So it kind of get the jump start, but then now you know what you need to do.
when you've got your feet and you feel confident with what you're doing and all the rest of it, and you kind of plow on them. Whereas now I tend to watch poets, more traditional poets, like people that were poets laureate of the country, like Simon Armitage. Now he's one of my favourite people to either read or listen to. Carol Ann Duffy I like to read. I don't really like listening to Carol because she's got one of the most boring, mundane voices that you can imagine. So I don't like listening to her pieces too much. But reading it, I'm appreciating now the structure and the way people weave their words together
Yeah,
a lot more than I would have 10 plus years ago. Do you know what I mean? So it's about finding what you like. But then the other thing that I would say to people that were just looking to start writing is, don't write something because you think somebody else would like it. Write something that you like, and then if you like it, somebody else somewhere will probably like it too. And if they don't, then that's cool. We don't all that. That's the thing about art, isn't it? It's subjective, and we don't all have to like the same things and the same art. So if somebody doesn't like, there's no need for anybody to be nasty or rude or disrespectful towards anybody's work. If somebody doesn't like it, that's fine.
yeah, yeah. If you're performing for other people, if you're doing anything for other people, it's got its date, it's got its sort of expiry date, hasn't it? It will work for so long, and then
You make it, the more dated it will be. So
yeah,
you do a poem now about COVID, right? We'll remember COVID for probably the rest of our lives, but it still dates it to a particular time. If you do a poem about Boris and the Tories, it's still then dating it to a particular time. A Donald Trump poem, it's to a particular time. You do a poem there, like I was commissioned about hope, it's just kind of a timeless thing then. People are always going to need and want and search for hope, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? So neither is right or wrong, and both are important. But it's just about, again, if it's someone that's starting to write, it's just about them considering that as well. Is how long do I want my poems to last for? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. If they resonate with something like that, the Hope poem that you did, that's always going to resonate then.
If they want some themes to just kind of get themselves started, I think if they just Google um, something like previous National Poetry Day themes or something like that. There's a different theme each year for National Poetry Day. It's been like water, the stars, freedom, identity, food, trust. So they've got a lot of kind of ambiguous topics that they can talk about there as well. So if they're looking for prompts or ideas of maybe what to write about, they can just look for National Poetry Day themes.
I'm gonna go ahead and try that now, and I've put it out there, so I've got to do it. I want to go back to your boxing career as well. Then I know that you've had a pretty decorated amateur career. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of that. You've had a lot of fights, and you've participated in Haringey as well, haven't you? I'm sure I saw a video of that.
I made the final two years running in Haringey. First final that I made no complaints with. I lost 2 rounds to 1. Boxed one of the GB lads, Joe Mafosa, Frank Warren and stuff now. So he's doing good things as a pro. But kind of gave as good as I got, and I went down there without a coach or anything. And then Mick just got in the corner and like helped me out because he knew I was training on my own and stuff for it. So Mick sort of just helped me out, and then he was there like on GB squad and stuff, you know. So I gave as good as I got. And then the second year, I thought I won I thought I did enough to win the final, and it was only as I watched it once we returned home that night, and I watched it again, and I thought that round went quick. I mean, just watching it, it was like a quick round. It's like that round went quick. So I went back and timed it, and they'd done 3 2-minute rounds instead of 3 3-minute rounds. And I thought I did enough to win anyway, but he was, you know, I'm not slagging anyone, but he was knackered at the end of the fight, and I'd have to have had another 3 minutes with me.
Yeah, that's changing people's careers, like decisions like that, and it's not the first time I've heard that, which is frustrating. How would you describe your boxing style?
I would describe my style as a counter attacker. So I like to come forward, try and, you know, lots of head movement and stuff, but I like making my opponent throw first, and then as I make those shots, hopefully then go over my head. Not always. As I make shots go over my head, I try and fill in the gaps then, and you know, so if they try and throw a jab, and I've slipped and let it come outside me, I'll then try and come over and then body and then move round and so on.
I can see the poetry coming in here with the rhythm straight away. But yeah, it's like educated pressure, isn't it? And the punches in bunches as well, like the combinations.
I'm not as, and obviously I'm nowhere near the sort of standard of these people was, but I'm not like as come forward as like a Ricky Hatton, for example, who he's why I love working the body and throwing the left hooks to the body and stuff, because I loved him as a keep growing up. But he was just like full steam.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more kind of, I try and box, and often if I have a lad that wants to come at me, I then get on the back foot and box them. It's only because during my amateur days and everybody was so much taller and longer than me that they would never come to me. So I had to sort of chase them and go after them. Do you know what I mean? But in the pros, as I get lads that come at me with head movement and stuff, I then tend to box and move a little bit more. So I kind of can do both. So yeah, counter attack, but I do like a scrap.
Yeah. You can see, I've watched some of your fights, and you come forward and throw nice combinations, but like when you're showing me the example there, it's like you say counter attacker, you're waiting to see as soon as you get that read, and it's a clever style of boxing because you have to read what you see. If they overreact, then you're like, I've got you on the next one.
Yeah, you're always sort of, you know, you're just looking for something that they do. You think, right, okay, every time I feint with the jab, I see the hands like come up a bit more. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to feint with the jab, and I'm going to whip a right uppercut to the ribs, or, you know what I mean, like whatever it is that you're seeing. So it allows me to, I find when I'm just kind of in a head-to-head sort of person, I get hit just as much as I hit. So it's not just about plowing forward and sort of having a fight. It's about trying to, like I say, make them throw, make them miss, filling in the gaps, and then changing the angle, and then trying to work in phases. So yeah, I've got a good style to watch. That's one thing that always gives me a little bit of um, satisfaction, I guess, with regards to like the pressure of people buying tickets off you and spending money to come and support me. Is I know that, and unless my opponent's absolutely horrible or world class, that I'm always going to be in a good fight. The only way I'm not going to be in a good fight is if my opponent just wants to hold me, because I come to fight. I don't come to win like safe or boring or anything. No, I'm always in a good scrap. So yeah, I think
Are you keeping the nickname Mattman? Because obviously, when you turned over to the pro game, you'd come in with a cape and it would be Mattman, and you'd have the theme, and then you put that along with the poetry and the personality. Anyway, I can just see it, on TV. It's friendly for that kind of thing.
all the Matman stuff. I've got like a black and yellow kit now. Like, so I've got my yellow belt on my shorts, like Batman's utility belt, and then I've got like the black and grey shorts, and then I've got my black hoodie and a grey cape that sort of flies out. So I'm like Del Boy and Rodney running in on my way to the ring. But yeah, I think all my mates and that, when I call them or whatever, that they answer the phone and they go, no. So I kind of couldn't not be Mattman now, really. I don't think so. It kind of suits me, I think, because I'm into like reading comics and graphic novels and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, I think it just sort of suits my persona and who I am as a person. So yeah, still got all of that. I've wrote myself, the Purge.
Yeah.
I've wrote myself, when it's the Purge commencement, and they say this is not a test, this is a blah, blah, blah. So I've wrote myself one of them, but tweaked it to like boxing words. So I'm hoping to try and get that recorded. So whenever my next fight is, I'll have like a Purge commencement at the beginning of the tune.
That'll be wicked. You need to make sure you get that recorded for the entrance as well.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You used to train with Neil. I can imagine you both characters. I can imagine there's some right stories between traveling around.
No, it's in bits, to be fair. Like every time we go sparring, or it's quite similar characters in many respects as well. Sort of like the fun size version of him. You know what I mean? So we kind of had quite a similar sense of humour and the way that we sort of speak and handle situations. So kind of was only with him for a couple of years, from me starting at fighting fit and finishing my amateur days there. About 3 years actually, so not still quite a good chunk of time really. But yeah, we sort of went everywhere we could for sparring. Sheffield spar Willie Dean, and Leicester spar Louis Norman, who was English champion at the time. Essex spar Charlie Edwards for just after his world title. By Cardiff spar Jay Harris, who's a world title contender.
Yeah, I need to get Neil on here as well. I feel like I'll have to put a disclaimer out at the start.
See, I'm alright because I'm used to working with kids. I've got a right potty mouth, but I'm not. I know when to well. I'm not sure.
So I want to talk about like where you're hoping to go and what your goals are now. Because as you mentioned, one of the decisions not going your way at Haringey, but you've had that through the pro career as well. You've had some, okay, every time I've heard about, a couple of the losses, people are saying, I thought Matt won. So what's happened there? Like, why is that? Are they just close fights?
My last two fights have been 10-round fights for the Midland title. And I thought I won both of them. I'm sort of, and I think most sports people are like this, to be fair, where I'm often more harsh on myself as it's happening than I should be. So often, if I think on the night it was really close, often I watch it back and I'm like, actually, it wasn't as close as what I thought it was. There's sometimes where you might think you've lost by a round and you watch it back and you're like, actually, for me to know I've lost, that like my first fight that I lost as a pro, I knew I'd lost it. I knew I hadn't boxed good enough then. I knew there was just so much wrong in the build up to it, everything. I almost knew I'd lost before I'd got in the ring. Do you know what I mean? It was just one of those instances. There was no kind of crying or moaning about it, the decision afterwards, because I just knew. I thought the referee could have been a bit stricter with regards to him holding me for the last couple of rounds, but I knew I didn't box well enough. So anything that I might, if I would have scraped a draw or something like that, it would have just been papering over the cracks, really. So I'm completely able to put my hand up and say, I lost that, or I didn't box good enough there, or whatever. But then I struggle when I do box well, and I feel like I win more than enough. And then the score doesn't reflect the kind of fight that it was as well. So when I fought Ejaz for the Midland title 2 years ago this month, I won round 1, I dropped him in round 2, and then the referee scored it 97-94. So I never won a round after round 2. He gave 10-10 rounds after round 2. But I didn't win a single round after round 2. And the news reporters there, John Pegg, he's not my manager, but everyone thought that I had won. His second coach come up to me after the night and shook my hand and was like, "I'm sorry you didn't get that." His dad messaged me. His dad messaged me and said, "Yeah, I thought you won at least 4 or 5 of the rounds." Well,
you've been hard done by when their dad's messaging you, admitting it.
4 of the rounds because of the knockdown, it meant it was a draw. And if I won 5 of the rounds because of the knockdown, it meant that I won by a point on his old man's scorecard. So,
Yeah.
the old man had it, let's just call it a draw. I probably did enough to win. Do you know what I mean? And was it last week or 2 weeks ago? He's gone and won the WBO and IBF European title. Do you know what I mean? And I'm still sort of in limbo, not knowing where. And the idea of me having to fight another Midland title fight now is a bit demoralising, really, because I felt like I beat Ejaz for it. Then I fought David Seymour, who unfortunately since our fight has had to retire. So I kind of, me and Ejaz are kind of still beefing a little bit, if you like, because we're both still active fighters, whereas he's had to retire and stuff because he failed his brain scan for his medical. So I don't want to bad mouth any, but I thought I did enough to win that fight as well. Do you know what I mean? I thought I won that fight. I thought I was in control. When I sat down after 4 rounds and Spencer said to me, "How are you feeling?" I said, "I just need to stay switched on, Spence, because at the moment I feel so comfortable that I don't want to switch off and get caught with something stupid and let him back into the fight." Do you know what I mean? So I was surprised at how comfortable I was finding it. And then Spencer, he's as straight as they come. He's not going to tell you want to fight. And he said to me after the fight, "You haven't won that. I don't know boxing." He fought for a world title, so
he definitely knows. Yeah, he knows boxing.
And then obviously I didn't win, and we've just gone backstage, and he was like, "I don't know boxing." It's like we don't know what I could have done different. And even Neil, I hadn't spoken to Neil for probably a year or years or something by the time I had those fights. And even Neil just messaged me out of the blue and was like, "I don't know what you've got to do to get a decision in these sorts of fights."
There's obviously a high volume of punches thrown in that division. Do you think that's partly what it is? And also with the refs deciding a decision, I've never been comfortable with that. Like, a ref's got a job to do as it is, never mind scoring the fight as well.
Scoring a 10-round fight is something that I'm massively against. I would even rather one judge scoring the fight, because ultimately it all comes down to money. That's what it is. If there are 3 judges plus the ref, they've got to pay 4 officials to do it. Whereas if just the ref's doing it, they've just got to pay the ref. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Is cost.
But yeah, and they pay money. You pay with your career then, and you don't get a chance to run that back, do you? So
they even just had one judge, and they'd maybe take a different seat around the ring for each round or whatever they wanted to do. I'd rather just 3 judges. Do you know what I mean? But if we're just going to have one official scoring a fight, then I'd rather having the referee who can just referee the fight and then having one judge to score the fight, because sometimes, as mad as this might sound as well, you can almost be too close to the action. You're too on top of it. You do sometimes. Like you see some drivers and they're like that off against the tree.
Yeah.
Those drivers, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you need to just kind of remove yourself back a little bit and give yourself a wider peripheral vision. And I think, with referees, sometimes they're almost too on top of the action, on top of then everything else to making sure they remember that cut was caused by a clash of heads.
Yeah, they've already got a job to do, so I never like it. And even with the one judge, like you say, it'd be better than the ref, but even still, it's just one perspective. You'd hope they'd just get more judges in.
You know what I mean? Just get the three
Yeah.
judges.
Yeah. With the flyweight division, do you feel like it's one of them, like you're thrown straight in? Because a lot of boxers, they have all these warm-up fights, but I feel like in the flyweight division, you're kind of thrown in there straight away.
You are definitely. For me, I half kind of wanted to be, because you see some lads, like, and you look at their record and they're 15 and up, right, and they've never been past the scheduled 6-rounder. And you just think, why did you turn pro?
Yeah, this is what I'm loving about MMA at the minute as well, because I'm a boxing fan, but I've kind of gone over towards UFC and watching that, because every fight, even if there's like a favourite, you're thinking, if it depends where this goes.
100%. But I turn pro to get rounds under me. I don't want to do 4 rounds and all the rest of it. I want to do 10, 12 round fights. So after my first defeat that I mentioned a moment ago, I then, because of injuries and me and Neil split and all the rest of it, then I went, I think, 14, 15 months between that fight and my next fight. And my next fight after that then was an 8-round fight. Now, I'd never been past 6 rounds previous. So I'd never been past 6 rounds. I just lost and I had 15 months out of the ring. And I said to my promoter, I want an 8-rounder to come back. And he was like, maybe we should just do a 4, get the ring rust off and then we'll look at it. I was like, mate, if you're going to get me a 4, you might as well send me out on the road to be a journeyman. I said, I want an 8-rounder. I said, I'm then happy to do a 4 after that. Do you know what I mean? If you need to just step in stone and all the rest of it, I appreciate there are times when you have to do it. But in that moment in time, I just wanted to get an 8-rounder in me. If I'd have lost the previous fight because my fitness wasn't good enough, then we'd have said, all right, let's get a 4 and let's get. I knew my fitness wasn't the issue. It's kind of my sharpness and how I was fighting and weight as well, because the guy that I lost to, he fights heavier than me and stuff as well. So multitude of things, but fitness is something I've never struggled with, because I train hard, but I've also just got that sort of, you get fit, of course, and there are times when I'm unfit when I come back after a holiday or something, and so you get fit, but then there's a certain layer then where it's just mental.
Yeah, is that where do you think that's where the second wind comes in?
Yeah, and having faith in what you're doing and the training. I've also known lads that are going into 10-round fights and they don't want to spar more than like 8 rounds at a time or something. Whereas when I was training for my 10-round fights, I was asking my coach if we could do like 12, 15 rounds with 3 different opponents. I'm thinking, well, if I can do it with them, then I can definitely do it on fight night with one person. Do you know what I mean? So it's like about trying to make. I don't need to win the sparring match. Do you know what I mean? As long as I'm not getting absolutely battered pillar to post every round, it won't be any good. But I don't need to win the spar. I need the spar and the training to be harder than what the fight's going to be. Do you know what I mean? That's what it needs. And then when you're in there with the fight, you're a bit like, oh, well, this is sad.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a cliche, but they say, don't they? Is it train hard and fight easy? Because you do try and prepare, so that's the case.
Last couple of fights as well, they're like, oh, yeah, that's been a war. And my last fight was in the top 10 British fights of the year, fights that happened on British soil. Number 1 in that list was Josh Taylor and Prograis. which is like multi-world title,
Yeah,
box cut.
that's some
You,
achievement.
they were number one, and there I am on the same list just for a little old Midland title, you know. So my fight, that's what I say, my fights are good fights to spectate. But for me, I'm thinking, I didn't even think those fights were wars, to be honest with you, because I just had so much fun with them and a couple of black eyes and stuff, but it weren't like my face was proper mashed up or anything like that. I had a couple of bruised eye bags, and that was it. My eye now looks worse than either of those two fights. When I fought the 10 rounder against DJ, I fought on the Friday. I was in the gym on Sunday training, and I'd done a 10 rounder 2 days before, and my coach was like, don't you want a weekend off? I was like, oh, I had my rest day yesterday, so I just thought I'd come in, just do a little bit on the bike or something, you know. And it's so for me, they weren't even, they were good fights, but they weren't even like wars, you know. Whereas you watch like Pereira Morales and stuff like that, and you're like, or Gatti Ward or something like that. You're like, I want to be in one of them.
Yeah, so you want to be taken to those mental depths that are just crazy, don't you? Like, you must go there in training anyway, and I guess that's why you're confident in doing that.
But my first fight with Spence, I got cut on both eyes, bad cuts, and couldn't, I couldn't see. The way I explain it to people is, imagine you're driving on the motorway and it's hammering it down with rain, and your windscreen wipers aren't working. That's what it was like, because there was literally like puddles of blood, just streams of blood that to like just keep constantly moving out of my face. So all I could see of my opponent really was from the waist down. Well, that's not the half of him that I need to see when he's punching me in the
Yeah.
face. So all I did was I just stayed nice and tight. I walked forward, and I thought, when his gloves hit my gloves, I know he's in punching range because he was my kind of stature. So as soon as I felt his glove hit me, I then just started throwing my own shots as well, because I thought he's got to be pretty close to me. And there was one time I managed to pin him on the ropes, and I was working, and where ordinarily I'd throw a few shots and then give an angle and then go again, and I just put my head on his chest and I just stayed there, because I thought, if I give an angle and then turn onto something,
Yeah.
I don't could be bad. I tried to pin him, keep him where he was, and just work. Do you know what I mean? And my coach said to me after the fight, he said, I saw lads fall to pieces from a nosebleed in sparring. You know, he said, you've had two bad cuts there, and you've come through it. Do you know what I mean? And I always thought I would, but you never know.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we've seen some top boxers, as soon as they get that cut, then it's a different game.
And yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's me, but I just feel I was buzzing. I was come out, and I didn't see my face or anything at first, but a few photos taken, and then the doctor had to glue me back together. And then when I got to look at myself, I got this big fat scar down here, and it's lining up. I loved it. I was taking selfies left, right, and centre. Absolutely loved it. Take more photos when my face is mashed up than when I'm like looking smart or something. You know what I mean? Because I think this is boxing, especially professional boxing. This is what it's all about. This isn't about trying to have a fledgling modelling career or something like that. You know, yeah, I know people say about, I want to know, I thought about this a couple of weeks ago. I want to know when, you know, people say boxing is the sport of hit and not be hit. I want to know when that became a popular phrase, because when you trace boxing back, it ain't about hit and not be hit at all. It's about beat the shit out of each other and the last man standing type of thing. That's what boxing and fighting was all about. And you trace it back to the bare knuckle days and the Queensberry rules, and even further thousands of years back to the Greek Olympics and all the rest of it. It hasn't always hit and not be hit at all.
I saw that you put something on Instagram as well that was talking about, the origin of boxing, I think it was.
Yeah, I like all kind of tracing it back and going right back to the ancient Greek times. And it's like, I think it's like the 3rd century BC or something that they first found like images and pictures of people wearing gloves that's not just boxing for the first, but wearing gloves for the first time, some Minoans and stuff. So it's such, and there's so many stories surrounding it as well. So like Theseus and the Minotaur. They believe that he was one of the founding fathers of boxing. They believe that Achilles from the Battle of Troy would have some when his friend Patroclus was killed. They held boxing matches during the Battle of Troy to commemorate and to honor his friend Patroclus. They believe the Spartans around 480, so the Battle of Thermopylae and stuff, they used to practice boxing as part of like sword and shield technique, but also from research that I've done, they said it was readying them for inevitable blows that they were going to get in battle. So it was like, we're going to get hit in battle, so we may as well do some boxing because, you know, it's just
Yeah.
toughening you up a little bit, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? That was theirs, but then boxing was kind of their sparring for going to war. Do you know what I mean? So being able to trace those roots back and kind of think, wow, you know, like I'm a minute part of that now still. And then of course one of the only other things that would have ran parallel to that is poetry and storytelling, you know,
Yeah.
and how far back oracy and yeah, kind of.
So do you think it's in us naturally, poetry and boxing and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think, and when I say poetry, like I say, I include that within telling stories and sharing tales and all that sort of stuff. It's something that have kept us entertained. But essentially, and you look at the likes of, like I just said, Theseus or Hercules or, you know, any of the Greek heroes, they're just kind of your original Batman and Superman and the comic book characters, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? That's their kind of generation's version of comic books and storytelling and stuff. And I think with regards to fighting, you know, you see it, don't you, like jokey videos on Instagram where like one hamster nicks another hamster's like carrot or something and they start fighting with each other. It's just in the right animals fight. It's an animalistic thing, isn't it? And I know some people would maybe like to think that we should be more civilized or rise above it or whatever. But I think this boxing, you know, martial arts, kickboxing, whatever, is a much more productive way to do it than just going down the blues and having a tear up. Do you know what I mean? Or going on Broad Street on the weekend and having a tear up. You know, a
Yeah,
lot of people.
I think
Oh,
fighting's always going to be there, isn't it? So like you say, it's best to have it sanctioned. And I think there is like a natural part of us, something ingrained in us where, you know, we do like to fight. There's something in everyone.
the most placid person in the world. If you walk into your house and you find someone's attacking your mom or, you know, trying to kidnap your daughters or whatever, are you telling me you're going to ask them politely to put them down? Or are you just going to go into attack mode? Do you know what I mean? So that may be their extreme, that may be their point of they would never put their hand on anybody until it got to that sort of level. So they may have a higher threshold than someone like myself, for example. Do you know what I mean? But ultimately, there is something that would make pretty much all of us fight for something, isn't there? Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone can snap, and it's funny that that's where we go with it. I think for me, I love boxing because the art style, and we talked about that, and you're very much into that, and you can see how it sort of compares and contrasts to the poetry. But then there is that bit I love as well, just the grit, as you say, you've had to overcome those cuts. I love that
Look,
side.
sometimes this has been part of my problem as well, where I actually enjoy fighting more than winning. Whereas I know most boxers, it's all about the winning. And as soon as they lose a fight, especially like early, you know, in the amateur days, and they might go to like 6-0, 7-0, and as soon as they lose one or maybe two, they disappear because they liked boxing, but what they loved was winning. That's what they love. And of course, I love winning. I'm a competitive person. You know, of course, I love winning, but I enjoy fighting. You know, in the boxing circumstances, but I enjoy the fight even more than I enjoy winning. So
Yeah.
even if I'm kind of buzzing the next day because I was in a fight last night, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
That
you always come through learning something, don't you? Like it's that the experience, not the result.
absolutely. And with regards to what you were saying earlier about flyweights and kind of jumping in at the deep end and stuff, I think the only reason that so many people, like I said, have got 15-0 records, but they've never been past 6 rounds or whatever, is because there's such critique on people that end up with a loss on their record. Like, oh, you can't be very good there because you've lost a few, or you've got a 50-50 record or whatever. That it makes people too cautious. Whereas if you were just allowed to fight the best all the time, even if you lost most of them or some of them or whatever, you're still up there fighting with some of the best lads, and yeah, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think with that, you do have to learn, because there aren't really journeymen in the flyweight division. They don't. There's maybe even the ones that have got losing records, they still come to win. You know, they come and there's not really journeymen that play the game and walk round and just let you go through the motions like there are at middleweight or welterweight or something. They don't really exist. Everyone has got ambition, because I think they know they rack up a couple of wins themselves. They're in line for some sort of shot themselves. It's to a lot of those guys, they would never have imagined they could ever fight for anything.
Yeah, with the flyweight division and the super flyweight division, they're very intriguing because, as you say, if you rack up 3 wins, then your career is just about to change compared to if you lose 3 in a row.
What you're saying about Ejaz, you know, he got that decision over me, and then I think he's won one like tick over fight since then. He lost to Harvey Horn, who's a really good boxer, who's on the GB side. So he lost to him in a WBO European title fight, and then because he lost that one, but that kind of gave him the chance to fight Frank Warren's lad for this other WBO European title, because they thought he was probably going to lose, and then he ended up taking the opportunity. And when it was, if I would have got that decision, I potentially would have been the person getting the phone call for that. Do you know what I mean? So it's just I'm speaking with my manager, and we're trying to forge kind of openings and make things happen. It's just COVID at the moment, really, which is preventing stuff.
But you're hopeful to get amongst these guys again and start pushing on. Because the other thing I was going to ask is, will you be staying in the flyweight division? Because sometimes the division can go a little bit sort of overlooked, can't it, when there's some great fights there? At the minute, we've got in the super flyweight the Edwards brothers as well. Can you see yourself eventually, you sparred them, would you like to go up and fight them?
The only way I'd go up in weight at the moment, I got to a stage where I couldn't make the weight anymore. Obviously, I would. The only way I'd kind of take the opportunity at the moment at Superfly is like with the Ejaz fight, for example. Someone said to me, "You get to fighting for the European titles at 8 stone 3." I'd take that straight away, because I think I'd end up knocking him out this time. Do you know what I mean? And I think I'd smash him to pieces. So I don't imagine I'd get that call at all. But if that sort of opportunity were to arise, then 100% I would take that. The other option that I'd be looking at, rather than Superfly, is to look at what we could do maybe at Lightfly, which is 7 stone 10, and to see if there are any opportunities that could maybe arise there. Because again, you were to win something at light flyweight, because that division's even more scarce than the flyweight and super flyweight. Something big could happen really quick.
Yeah. Who are you managed by now?
The PJ Racing, so yes, still with PJ. It's who I've been with for all of my pro career.
And your coach is Spencer McCracken. Who else is in that stable then?
We've got Jack O'Keefe, who's the Midland champion. He's in line for even an English title shot or an English title eliminator. Again, COVID and just delaying stuff. So waiting for that. We've got Drew Brown, who's getting an English title fight. So again, COVID, we're just waiting on dates and stuff, but he's going to have an English title fight coming. We've got Matt Craddock, who knows Swiggy. He was 2-0, and then he took his third fight against Jack Bateson. No one would fight him. And he lost that over 6 rounds, but he'd never been past 4 rounds previous. And Bateson's heavier than Swiggy and box for the GB international. So he's learned a lot from that. So he's looking then at just getting another win on his record, and then potentially moving forward towards a Midland title. We've got Brett Fido now with us as well, training with us. So that's great. great
And
spot.
you two have fought before, so is there any chance of that happening again, or not?
From a sparring perspective now, because we're in the same gym and stuff, so we're just training partners really. I think Spence wants his weight down. He's used to fighting at kind of 9 stone. But I think Spence wants to get him closer to the 8.5 mark. You know, whereas like I say, I've proven now I'm an 8 stone fighter, kind of a heaviest. You know what I mean? But it's great sparring to have with Swig and Brett as well. So yeah, we've got a good few lads in the gym and lads that are all kind of few title fights really, you know. So it's exciting times for us, but everyone's just, you are having to just hold the leash and keep the reins on a little bit, because when you know you're fighting, you just go into a different kind of mental level. You know what I mean? So I'm training hard, I'm dieting hard, training this morning before speaking to you. I've got the gym tonight, so we're training hard, but it's just different sort of level when
Yeah,
you.
I think once you've got something lined up, you're, like you say, you're going to war in your mind. You're going to war, and you're not going to learn as much in that time.
When you like at the moment, I've got an idea of fight. I know a fight that my manager's working on for me, and so far everything's been agreed. We've got a provisional date, but until it's actually confirmed, and there are posters, and I'm told I can put it on my social medias and all that sort of stuff, then it's not happening. You know what I mean? Until it's happening, it's not happening. So you're kind of working with that in the back of your head and training with that in the back of your mind, but it's different to saying, right, this fight is definitely happening. Off you go, kind of thing.
But do you feel like you learn more in between those times?
I'm never really out of the gym. So where I was saying last year about having those 3 months off, that was only because of lockdown and because the gym was closed. And then because of that, and because I was in quite a bad mental state after the previous year with the 2 Midland title decisions that I had against me, I just needed a break. I didn't have that motivation to train on my own from home. Do you know what I mean? So, but aside from that, I'm never really out of the gym. Like I said earlier, in that fight where I got the cuts, and the Ejaz fight, whenever I fight on the Saturday or what, in fact, the Ejaz fight, I fought on the Friday, and Sunday is one of our sparring days. So I fought on the Friday, and then I text Spencer on a Saturday saying, "Do you want me in for sparring tomorrow?" And he was like, "For sake, just weekend off." I'd have gone in sparring on the Sunday, even though I had a 10-round fight on the Friday. So I'm always straight back in the gym because I like my grub. So if I stay out of the gym for too long, I'll just get too fat, and so it's just, whilst you're on that mindset of training and going to the gym, I just like to keep that up. My way of relaxing then is to train once a day instead of twice a day, and to eat a little bit more of the food that I want to eat as opposed to the food that I have to eat. That's me feeling like I have a bit of a break from it. But I was really, honestly, after my last fight at the end of 2019, I could have just backed it all off. I just had enough after my last 2 fights. I could have just, but it's only me being a stubborn SOB that the reason I haven't sacked it in. I just think, I'm just going to, as long as my body will allow me to keep doing it, I'm just going to keep doing it. Because if I had a period of time off now, a substantial period of time, I'm too old to come back again. I couldn't get unfit and then come back like I could if I was 22. You know what I mean?
If you ruin your metabolism now, towards the sort of end of your career, then it's done. But as you say, though, you only need to accumulate a few wins before you're right up there, and you're already up there anyway. But what would a perfect year be now? Like, forget the politics and the COVID. What would a perfect year be?
Perfect year be to, initially would be getting back in the ring. That would be a perfect year. Having it for for some form of title, getting that kind of opportunity, because the fight that EJ's just won for the European title, taking nothing away from him, he boxed fantastic. I feel like I would have won that fight as well. Do you know what I mean? So I just need a break. You know what I mean? I just need it to fall, the cards to fall my way as opposed to not. Like I say, with sparring, I'm training hard. I'm pretty sharp. My weight at the moment, I'm only a couple of pounds heavier than I was the week before my last fight. You know what I mean? So my weight is pretty good. I'm on it really. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to do everything that's within my power to help whatever the spirits or the energies go my way. You know, I just need a little break.
You can tell when the fire's still there when you speak to a boxer. They get the grin, and you can tell like you want to move. Like, as soon as I say what's the perfect year, you want to walk straight into the ring, don't you?
You know, I'm training. I'm training. You know, as hard, if not harder, than I've ever trained, and I've not even got a fight date guaranteed to me yet. Do you know what I mean? And I returned to the gym last June. So potentially by the time I get back in the ring, I'd have been training for 12 months or more without a fight to train for, you know, and yet I've been training really hard. So perfect year for me would be a 10 or even a 12 round fight. I'd love a 12 round fight just to, you know, when you're retired and you look back and you go, I did a 12 rounder, you know.
Yeah,
So
it's some achievement, that is. I've just done white collar, 3 rounds, and people look at it. Oh, it's just the 3 rounds, and I always think, just shadow box for a minute and then speak to me.
100%. It's and that's why even if you do let's say 3-2s or those that do 3-3s or whatever, it still gives you an idea of how much training you did in the build up for that. You know how tired you felt then at the end of 2 minutes. So you go, how much is this geezer that's done 12 3 minutes plus working a day job and training before and after work? How much have they had to put into it? And I wouldn't be the exception to the rule. That's the majority of boxers out there that are fighting at championship level still. Do you know what I mean? They're having to graft in the day, run to work, or do something in the morning, and then go to the gym straight from work. And it's grueling, So
I love watching that though and supporting it. That aspect of all sports, because I'm a fan. Like, even sports I don't enjoy, in terms of like the athlete, I find it so intriguing to see, this person's putting it all on the line. But I'm
especially
just
people doing it as well. Do you know what I mean? The amount of people, when people have said to me, "Oh, I can't afford to come and watch you," fair enough. I'm not judging anybody's financial situation, but then you see they've got tickets to the Joshua fight in London.
yeah.
They've got to travel to London. They've got to stay in London overnight. The tickets are more expensive, isn't it? So you know what I mean? It's like, if you don't want to come, that's fine. You just say you don't want to come. But it is about trying to support local people, and I'm not just on about myself. There are lots. Even now, I'm based in South Birmingham. There are a bunch of boxers just around South Birmingham. Like I tell you, me, Swiggy, Kane Baker, who's doing good things at the moment. We're all in that same kind of vicinity, and then you've got like James Kennelly and Conatini that are doing the bare knuckle thing, and so just in a very small circumference of South Birmingham, there are lads either within boxing or bare knuckle that are doing well for themselves. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not just on about people supporting me. I'm on about anyone that might be listening to this in Bristol, supporting the local Bristol fighter, or someone in Manchester supporting the Mancunian fighter. Do you know what I mean? But do support the people that are.
Yeah, it's important, and it'll give you an actual taste of what boxing's about. Not that Joshua's not a real talented boxer, but like those shows are really glamorized, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. It's not, they're your rock stars of the sporting world, and it's like when you listen to music, for every top band or top musician that's number one in the charts, there are 1,000 other talented musicians that are playing at festivals and pubs and clubs and that sort of stuff that are sometimes better than the people that are number one in the charts, but they just don't get that break,
Yeah.
And like with me, Joshua would get paid more for a British title fight than I would get for a world title fight. just because he's 10 stone heavier than me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and in this world of equality, you know, it's like it's not my fault. I'm a little dot. You know what I mean? But I know it comes down to like intrigue and interest. But when people actually sit and watch flyweight, superfly, phantoms, you know, sort of the lower guys, we provide some of the cracking fights because we just throw millions of punches.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's ridiculous when you watch it, to be fair, because I'm always like, I don't know how you guys throw so many punches. It's crazy. But yeah, I hope you get the break this year and next year and start, you know, once you get these wins in. People, I mean, I could see you putting the spotlight on the division. You've got the poetry, you've got the Matman thing, and you got like a nice style to watch.
I
We-
always say I like to kind of demonstrate with my style that flyweights are watchable, you know. But then you've got lads like Jay Harris, who's always in exciting fights as well. His last fight, I think, when he was defending his uh, Commonwealth title against one of the Sky lads, his name just came from me. But he's a cracking little fighter as well, short, stocky. Braithwaite, Marcel Braithwaite, great style to watch. Tommy Frank's got an exciting style to watch. Kyle Youssef got a good style to watch. And then, you know, the Edwards, not necessarily the best style to watch from an all-action point of view. But good style. Thomas Asamba, good style to watch. Ejaz has got a good style to watch because he comes forward and throws punches. Do you know what I mean? It's I'm just reeling off names without even thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? Like there's your top 10. Do you know what I mean? And I haven't mentioned like Joe Maposa and Harvey Horn and all these people that are mulling around. So it's a really exciting division to be a part of, and there are some fantastic fighters. I think the top 10, the top lads that are in there, are as good as any of the other top 10 throughout the country. It's just that there's not as much depth. Then, you know, the kind of 11 to 20 isn't as good as maybe the 11 to 20s elsewhere throughout the country.
yeah.
They're,
Do you think it's just strictly a weight thing, or the less KOs being in that division?
well, I think both, but even with the KO thing, you do see knockdowns and knockouts within it. I mean, Chavez that Jay Harris fought, he just knocked out Andrew Selby. There's another one I haven't even mentioned, and he's probably the best of the bunch. Do you know what I mean? But I think it was Chavez. He knocked out Edwards, Charlie, and Selby. I mean, he just punches like insanely hard. You know, I dropped, and then that was at world level, and then down at Midland title level, I put Ejaz on his backside. So there are still knockouts and knockdowns and stuff within the flyweight divisions, but it's almost like because we're smaller than your average person, people just don't kind of take it as seriously. They dismiss it a little bit more, like it's not quite real boxing, like opposed to the heavyweights and stuff. But a lot of the times with the heavyweights, it's one punch and they're out. You know, you very rarely see an Ali Fraser, an Ali Foreman type of heavyweight.
And as good as Joshua is technically for a heavyweight, he can't do the things that you can do at your weight. Like the footwork's different.
To making the weight, you know, it's the only division in the world where they don't really have to make weight. I mean,
Yeah.
Josh, fantastic shape, and you know that obviously comes from dedication, not just through your training, but through your diet as well. So you can't slate him for that. But it's not like they have those same pressures of having to make weight. You know what I mean? I mean, we've been there. You know, I sat in the gym after a 2-hour training session with our sweatsuit and stuff on, heaters and everything, trying to sweat out the last little bit, feeling well sorry for myself, almost swearing at the amateur kids and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Just like in such a foul mood, just to try and make the weight. And the heavyweights don't have to go for any of that.
Yeah, that's rough. And I always think that once you're in that ring and you've had to make weight, you're a different animal. Like you're different people. The people who get in the ring and have had to make that weight.
Look, because you feel like a bit of a zombie when you weigh in and stuff. You know what I mean? You feel a zombie. But my last fight, it took me a good 25, 26 hours before I started to feel human again. But then just before few hours before the fight, and you start to feel it, you start to feel normal again. And then you put on your little 8-ounce gloves. Remember, you've been training in like 10s or 12s, you've been sparring in 14s, and you put on your little 8-ounce gloves and you start hitting the pads and everything, and you just flying, do you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, I'm gonna hurt somebody tonight, and then
Yeah.
your opponent's wearing the same gloves as you.
Just before rounding up, Matt, I've enjoyed talking to you. I just wanted to ask, I mean, we mentioned the heavyweights and how I'm hoping people do their homework on the flyweight division and poetry and all the things we've been talking about. But I did want to ask you your opinion on 2 fights. First one being if Joshua and Fury get it done. And now we've just had Billy Joe Saunders is fighting Canelo. So I just wanted your predictions for that.
So I think Fury. I'd go Fury over Joshua. Reason being, I think he handles the pressure a little bit better. And although he's never defended a title yet since becoming world champion, he went to Germany and dethroned Klitschko, and he went to America and dethroned Wilder, arguably twice. And I just feel that puts him in good stead. I'm trying not to be swayed by the Ruiz fight too much, because I believe that Klitschko hit AJ harder than Ruiz hit AJ. And AJ got up from the Klitschko fight and it just wasn't there for whatever reason. And I think knowing how, Fury Joshua, just how big of a fight that is. But how can you go against someone that hasn't lost yet? That's the thing. I know we can all have an opinion, but I bet against Fury before. I thought Klitschko was going to beat him. You know what I mean? And he hardly won a round. So I can't go. Then I thought if Wilder connects with him, Wilder will knock him out. Wilder connects with him, Wilder knocked him out, and then he got up.
Yeah, and then I thought to myself, everyone said, "Oh, he outboxed Wilder," but in the rematch, I was thinking, well, he knows now it doesn't matter if he outboxes him. At some point, he can get clipped, but he absolutely dominated that fight.
So, and I was more impressed with Fury first outboxing and then outfighting Wilder than what I was AJ in a life and death with Klitschko and then outboxing Ruiz. When he had that rematch with Ruiz, it was very safe, and I don't blame. If I would have been Robert McCracken or AJ or whatever, that's exactly how the fight should have gone down, 100%. But it was still very safe. Do you know what I mean? And I think Klitschko looked better. Fury is better boxing than AJ is, but he showed that he can go to. And AJ, as hard as AJ hits, I don't think he hits harder than Wilder. So even if he hits as hard as Wilder, he can come through that. So yeah, I'd go Fury on that one, and then Billy Joe Canelo. I think Billy Joe has the potential to frustrate him for a period of time. If people have watched or go back and watch the Lara fight, Canelo, I thought at the time, Lara, though very negative, I thought he potentially did enough to win, simply because I didn't think Canelo had landed enough because of how negative Lara was being. It's like he gets really awkward, negative amateur fights.
Well, a lot of people scored that to Lara, didn't they?
And I thought that he, at the time, but Canelo is a different beast to that now. And yeah, so I think you'd have to go Canelo, just taking over from the second half of the fight. Billy Joe has a good start, and Billy Joe's never much been known for his fitness as well.
Yeah, every time we get to the second half of a fight, one that he could be cruising, and you're thinking he might even finish someone.
Junior,
Who's Eubank? Yeah,
in that fight, and then next thing you won by like a point or whatever it was. Do you know what I mean? And he
Did he
won
go
it.
to a decision against Andy Lee as well? Because
No,
oh, did he finish him in the end? Because it took him a bit of time, didn't it? It looked like he was going to finish him earlier.
so I think potentially he could cause problems for Canelo early on. But again, if you're just sort of talking safe money and all the rest of it, I think you'd have to go Canelo.
Yeah, to be honest, as much as I'm kind of backing Saunders and want him to win, or at least like give some problems, I really think Canelo's going to just
Always
take
got-
him out.
Yeah, I think. I don't know what condition he kind of keeps himself in between fights as well. So depending on what condition he's in now, going into the fight, you want to be going into this training camp almost fitter than you've ever been before. You don't want to be starting this training camp fat. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying but it depends.
I've heard that he's not in training yet. I can't remember where, and I mean it's a rumor, but I'm not sure if he's been ill. So you just think if that stays for May, he's up against it. So I really think, Canelo might take over that fight a bit earlier than what we've expected.
Yeah, 100%. Like 3 or 4 onwards.
Yeah, it's going to be.
You as well, won't he, Canelo? That's the thing. He'll have a look at you. And again, I mean, obviously he's a completely different level to me, but it's that sort of style that I like because Canelo comes forward, but with the head movement and looking and stalking and moving because he wants you to throw. And then as you're throwing and you're just sitting back or slipping and rolling under, and he then throws the punches where the gaps are.
So
he's the sort of fighter that I could watch and try to imitate in a way because I feel I fight a much worse version, but that's a similar style to the way I fight. Whereas there'd be no point me watching and studying videos of Floyd Mayweather, for example, because that's not how I fight.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess Canelo, he's like computerizing it all, isn't he? He's seeing the moves and he's like, yeah, got that. So yeah, it's exactly what we talked about earlier with your style as well. So it's something to take inspiration from, isn't it? But yeah, Matt, it's been wicked speaking to you. Like I say, it's been a long time, and I look forward to seeing this year and next year, hopefully getting back in the ring. And
I don't know. Yeah, I'll be Britain's oldest flyweight before you know it.
But yeah, I'll be looking out for it. Where can people find you and how can they support you? We mentioned buying tickets and sort of put the spotlight on the flyweights as well.
Social medias and stuff. If people want to get at me on there, I'm MattWindlePoet on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if people ever write some stuff and they just want to send me something through that they've wrote, I always try and look at what people send me. And I've had 2 emails this week just of people that have sent me poems and from like their class and stuff. And I've replied, and then they've messaged me back like, "Oh, Matt, thanks ever so much for replying. It's gonna make their day when they know that you've replied." And I'm thinking, why wouldn't I reply? It's like, you know what I mean? So yeah, if anyone wants to send me anything that they create off the back of listening to this or watching this, then I'd be more than happy to read through something you've got.
That's awesome, man. And like I say, it's great having a role model like yourself and hearing what you're doing with the kids as well. But appreciate your time, Matt. Thank you.
Time as well. Thank you very much.